Salvete, and welcome to Chapter 7's overview from Wheelock's Latin Grammar. Today we're going to look at third declension nouns. We'll get around to third declension adjectives in Latin too around about Chapter 16 or so. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at third declension nouns. So third declension nouns can be all three genders. They can be masculine, feminine, and neuter as well. There's a great variety in the possible spellings for the nominative ending, but they're consistent in the genitive. The genitive always ends in is. So that's how you can tell it's a third declension noun. The genitive ends in is. The declension of forms is just like we've done before, base plus endings. So again, let's go ahead and take a look at some our new endings for third declension nouns, and then we'll look at a few examples. So we have a new category of nouns with third declension, so we're going to have some new case endings. There's no set nominative case ending for third declension nouns. There's a great variety, so we just tend to leave that blank on our charts. Genitive always ends in is, dative singular ends in I, accusative em, ablative ends in e, and the vocative form is exactly the same as the nominative. When we get to the plural, nominative plural ending is es, genitive plural is dative plural is ibus, ibus. Accusative plural is ses. And then ablative plural, again, ibus. And then vocative plural, same as the nominative plural, ends in es. So a few more endings to memorize. Notice there is some overlap from first-second conjugation or first-second declension nouns. So make sure you keep those things straight. So the previous endings we took a look at were all for the masculine and feminine forms. We'll go ahead and take a look at the neuter forms, which we'll see are very similar with a few exceptions. Again, no set nominative ending for third declension neuters. Genitive ends in is, dative ends at I. Neuter accusative, singular, is exactly the same as the nominative. And we'll see it's not just the endings that are the same, it's the complete form of the word that's the same. So we'll see that in an example. Ablative singular ends in e, and then vocative, same as the nominative. Again, not just the same ending, but exactly the same form of the word. When we go to nominative plural, it just ends in a. So again, some overlap with first declension. Genitive plural ends in dative plural, again, ibus. Accusative ends in a. Ablative plural, again, ibus, and then vocative, same as the nominative, ends in a. So those are the neuter endings for third declension nouns. So now that you've committed all that to memory, let's go ahead and look at a few examples. So we'll start with the third declension masculine noun, rex, regis, which means king. So we go to the genitive singular, regis, drop the is, and there's our base, reg. So nominative singular already given, rex, king. Genitive singular also already given, regis, of the king. So we found our base. We're going to add our endings. Dative singular, regi, to or for the king. Accusative singular, regem, the king. Ablative singular, rege, by, with, or from the king. And then vocative, same as the nominative, rex, O king. We go to our plurals, nominative plural, reges, the kings. Genitive plural, regum, of the kings. Dative plural, regibus, to or for the kings. Accusative plural, reges, the kings. Ablative plural, regibus, by, with, or from the kings. And again, vocative, same as the nominative, reges, O kings. So that was a masculine example. Let's go ahead and look at a feminine example. Virtus, virtutus, merit. So again, we go to the genitive, drop the case ending, and we're left with virtut as our base. Some nominative singular, virtus, merit. Genitive singular, virtutus, of the merit. Dative singular, virtuti, to or for the merit. Accusative singular, virtutem, the merit. Ablative singular, virtute, by, with, or from the merit. And vocative, virtus, O merit. We go to our plurals, nominative plural, virtutes, the merits. Genitive plural, virtutum, of the merits. Dative plural, virtutibus, to or for the merits. Accusative plural, virtutes, the merits. Ablative plural, wir tutibus, by with or from the merits. And then vocative plural, same as the nominative, wir tutes, O merits. So there's a feminine example for third declension. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example for neuter third declension. Form the same way, dropping the case ending from the genitive and then adding the case endings. So nominative singular. Here's our example now, by the way, corpus corporis. The basis corpore, which we got by dropping the is. So nominative singular, corpus, the body. Genitive singular, corporis, of the body. Dative singular, corpori, to or for the body. Accusative singular, corpus, again, same as the nominative, not just the same endings, but the same form. Corpus, the body. Ablative singular, corpore, by, with, or from the body. And then vocative, again, same as the nominative, corpus, O body. We go to our plurals, nominative plural, corpora, the bodies. Genitive plural, corporum, of the bodies. Dative plural, corporibus, to or for the bodies. Accusative plural, corpora, the bodies. Ablative plural, corporibus, by, with, or from the bodies. And then again, vocative plural, corpora, O bodies. So what you'll notice with the neuter is the accusative is always the same as the nominative in both singular and plural. And we actually call that the neuter rule. So the neuter rule says the accusative is exactly the same form as the nominative. So with third declension nouns, you might have noticed that it can be all three genders. It can be masculine, it can be feminine, or it could be neuter. So how do we keep that straight on our heads? How do we remember which nouns are which gender? As always, the best way is to memorize the gender along with the noun as you're learning your vocabulary. But there are a few hints that are almost always true, so with very few exceptions. If a third declension noun ends in or, orus, or taurus, it's usually masculine, with very few exceptions. Feminine third declensions very commonly end in either tas, tatus, tus, tutus, tudo, tudinus, or tio, tionis. So if you see those endings for third declension nouns, most likely it's feminine. Neuters very commonly end in us in the nominative, or they end in e, al, ar, or sometimes they end in men, men. So if you see those endings for third declension, most likely it's neuter. So just a few little hints there to help us identify which gender goes with which nouns. Always best just to memorize them, but a few guidelines. A few things to keep in mind as we start to do translations. Remember that third declension nouns can be modified by first, second declension adjectives. So we're going to have some cases where the adjectives do agree number, gender, and case with the nouns they modify, but the endings aren't necessarily going to be the same. So always make note of a noun or adjective's declension as you go through and start to translate your sentence. So the endings aren't necessarily always going to agree, but they will agree number, gender, and case. So let's see a few examples of this just to clarify. We have the phrase Magnus Rex, the great king. Rex is a third declension noun, and it's in the nominative in this case, and it's being modified by a second declension adjective, Magnus. So they don't have the same endings, but they do agree number, gender, and case. Same would be true with the phrase true peace, vira pax. If it was in the genitive, it'd be virae pacis. So again, the endings aren't necessarily the same, but they do still agree number, gender, and case. So in this chapter, we were introduced to third declension nouns, so more forms to memorize. As we get into the next chapter, we're going to learn third conjugation verbs. So until we meet again, volete.